My name is Sylvia, 34 years old, and right now I'm putting on the most expensive dress I own, preparing to crash my ex-husband's wedding. He thinks he got everything in the divorce, thinks he's starting fresh with his 23-year-old mistress, but he doesn't know I cancelled every credit card the day our divorce finalised. He also doesn't know I'm walking into that reception with 15 years of financial records that will destroy everything. Before we begin this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how one sentence at a wedding can make $300,000 disappear and send a groom to federal prison. Trust me, what happens when I stand up during the toasts will leave you speechless. Meeting Marcus felt like winning the lottery, except I'd later learn I was the prize he was cashing in. It was September 2009 when I first saw him at Preston and Associates, the Boston law firm where I worked as senior accountant. I was reviewing quarterly reports in the conference room when he walked in, all 6 feet 2 inches of perfectly tailored confidence. His smile could light up the entire financial district. "You must be Sylvia," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Marcus' junior partner in corporate litigation. I've heard you're the one who actually keeps this place from financial chaos." I laughed, feeling my cheeks warm. At 24, I was the youngest senior accountant the firm had ever hired, and I took pride in managing multi-million-dollar accounts. Marcus was 28, ambitious, and had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room worth talking to. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours. We discovered we both grew up in Massachusetts, both lost a parent young, and both had dreams bigger than the confines of traditional corporate life. He wanted to make partner before 35. I wanted to eventually run my own financial consulting firm. Coffee meetings turned into lunches. Lunches became dinners. Within 3 weeks, we were inseparable. Marcus introduced me to symphony performances, wine tastings in the Berkshires, sailing on the Charles River. He'd show up at my office with my favourite lavender honey latte just when quarterly reports were stressing me out. He'd text me legal jokes during boring meetings to make me smile. "You're different from other women I've dated," he told me one evening as we watched the sunset from his harbour view apartment. "You understand ambition. You understand that building something meaningful requires sacrifice." 8 months later, he proposed at the same conference room where we met. The entire firm applauded when I said yes. We married the following June in a beautiful ceremony at his family's estate in Wellesley. 200 guests, a string quartet, and me thinking I'd found my perfect partner in life and ambition. After the honeymoon in Santorini, we settled into what seemed like an ideal rhythm. Marcus worked long hours, building his reputation at the firm. I managed our finances with the same precision I brought to my professional work. It made sense that I'd handle the money given my expertise. I added Marcus to all my credit cards as an authorized user. We opened joint checking and savings accounts. I even included him on my investment portfolios, the ones I'd started building since college, with the money my grandmother left me when I was 18. "You're the money genius," Marcus would say, kissing my forehead as I organised our bills. "I'll win the cases, you make sure we can retire by 50. That grandmother's inheritance was $450,000, carefully invested and grown over 6 years. I'd turned it into nearly $600,000 through smart market moves and compound interest. When Marcus suggested we use some of it for a down payment on a bigger apartment, something befitting a future partner at the firm, I agreed. We were building our future together after all. I supported his partnership track completely. When the firm strongly suggested he get an executive MBA to strengthen his business acumen, I paid the $70,000 Columbia tuition from my inheritance. When he needed custom suits for important client meetings, I handed him my American Express black card. When he insisted on joining the Harvard Club for networking purposes, the $8,000 annual fee came from our joint account, which was 90% funded by my salary and investments. The changes started so gradually, I almost missed them. First, it was the working late. Marcus had always been ambitious, but suddenly he was at the office until midnight 3 or 4 nights a week. Then came the weekend conferences, banking law symposiums in New York, corporate litigation seminars in Philadelphia, always last minute, always crucial for his career. Partnership track is brutal, he'd explain, pecking my cheek as he packed another overnight bag. But once I make senior partner, we'll have all the time in the world, maybe start that family we talked about. I believed him, even when he came home smelling like a cologne I didn't recognize. Even when his phone started pinging with texts he'd silence without reading. Even when charges appeared on our credit cards for restaurants I'd never been to. He always had explanations. Client dinners, team celebrations, networking events spouses weren't invited to. The first real flag I couldn't ignore came on a Thursday in March, 2 years into our marriage. I was doing laundry and found a receipt in his suit pocket. Mystique Restaurant, $230, dated the previous Saturday, when he was supposedly at a conference in Hartford. The receipt showed 2 dinner entrees, a bottle of Chateau Margaux, and chocolate soufflé for 2. My hands shook as I stared at that piece of paper. But when I asked Marcus about it that evening, he didn't miss a beat. That was with Harrison from Dallas, he said, barely looking up from his laptop. He's sending us huge corporate cases. I had to wine and dine him properly. You know how these Texas guys expect the full treatment. I wanted to believe him. I chose to believe him because the alternative was admitting that the life we'd built, the future we'd planned, the sacrifices I'd made, were all founded on something rotten. But that receipt was like a crack in a dam. Once I started looking, really looking, I couldn't stop seeing the water seeping through. The unravelling started with credit card statements. As the financial expert in our marriage, I'd always managed our accounts online, going paperless to save trees. But something made me request physical statements for the past 6 months. When they arrived, I waited until Marcus was at another weekend conference to spread them across our dining room table. The patterns emerged like a prosecutor's evidence chain. Tiffany & Company, $3,800, purchased on a Tuesday when I was in Chicago for a compliance training. I'd never received any jewelry. Mandarin Oriental Hotel, $450 for a day room during lunch hours when Marcus claimed to be in court. The same hotel appeared 5 more times over 3 months, always weekday afternoons. There were charges at lingerie boutiques I'd never heard of, spa treatments at places I'd never been, restaurant after restaurant, always for 2, always at places Marcus knew I didn't like because they served the kind of pretentious foam cuisine I couldn't stand. My forensic accounting brain kicked into overdrive. I created a spreadsheet categorizing every suspicious charge, date, time, amount, and Marcus's stated whereabouts. The total came to $43,000 over 6 months. $43,000 of our money, my money spent on someone who wasn't me, but I needed proof of who. That's when I remembered Jennifer, Marcus's secretary. She'd always been kind to me, but lately she'd been avoiding eye contact at firm events. The next Monday, I invited her for coffee. "Jennifer," I said, sliding a vanilla latte across the table to her, "I need you to tell me about Brittany." Her face went white. "I don't know what you mean." "Please, I already know something's going on. I just need to know what I'm dealing with." Jennifer stared at her coffee for a long moment. "She's a paralegal, 23 years old, started at the firm last year. Marcus was assigned as her mentor." My stomach churned, but I kept my voice steady. "How long?" 6 months that I know of, maybe longer. "Sylvia, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but Marcus said if I breathed a word, he'd have me fired and make sure I never worked in Boston legal circles again." 6 months, while I was paying for his MBA, while I was managing our investments, while I was believing his lies about conferences and client dinners. "Does everyone at the firm know?" Jennifer nodded miserably. "She doesn't try to hide it. Posts pictures on Instagram constantly. Her desk is covered with flowers he sends, designer bags she jokes about her daddy buying her. That afternoon, I hired a private investigator, $800 a day from my personal emergency fund, the one account Marcus didn't know existed. Within a week, Thomas Hutchinson retired. Boston PD detective turned PI had compiled a devastating portfolio. Photos of Marcus and Brittany at Mistral, their bodies intertwined in a booth. Pictures of them entering the Mandarin Oriental together at lunch, him with his hand on her lower back. Weekend shots of them in Newport on a yacht belonging to one of Marcus's clients. She was blonde, stunning in that artificial way that requires thousands in maintenance, and young enough to be the daughter we'd talked about having. The most damaging evidence came from social media. Thomas had found Brittany's Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok accounts. She documented everything, though she was careful never to show Marcus's face fully. But I recognized his watch, his hands, the distinctive Princeton class ring he never removed. Her captions were nauseatingly sweet. My man treats me like a queen, blessed to be spoiled by the best. Age is just a number when you've found your soulmate. One particular post made me vomit. A photo of her hand wearing a massive diamond bracelet captioned, "Early birthday gift from my love. He says I deserve diamonds every day." The date matched a $10,000 charge on my Amex that Marcus had explained as client entertainment expenses. I started documenting everything meticulously, screenshots of every social media post, copies of every receipt, recordings of Marcus's lies when he'd come home late. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, slowly transferring money from my personal investment accounts. Small amounts, at first, nothing Marcus would notice. The turning point came when I found a charge that broke something inside me. Harry Winston, $38,000 purchased on the March 15th. That was my grandmother's birthday. The grandmother whose money was funding Marcus's affair. The grandmother who'd told me before she died to never let a man control my finances. I knew what a $38,000 purchase at Harry Winston meant. That wasn't a bracelet or earrings. That was an engagement ring. 3 days later, Marcus came home with flowers, lilies which he'd forgotten I was allergic to. "I've been thinking," he said over dinner at our apartment, "maybe we should look into separating some of our finances, for tax purposes. My accountant thinks we could save money if we file separately." I smiled and nodded, cutting into my salmon with precise movements. "That makes sense. Should we also separate the investment accounts? Well, those are pretty complex. Maybe we leave those joint for now, but the credit cards, we should probably each have our own. I'll get my own cards set up this week." Perfect. He was already planning his exit strategy, thinking I was too trusting to notice. But what Marcus didn't know was that I'd already consulted with Margaret Thompson, the best divorce attorney in Massachusetts. Not at his firm, of course. Margaret worked at a competing firm and had a reputation for destroying cheating husbands in court. "Document everything," Margaret had advised. "Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, but if we can prove dissipation of marital assets, you could get much more. Keep playing the loving, trusting wife. Let him think he's getting away with it." So I did. I smiled when Marcus worked late. I didn't question the new charges. I even helped him apply for his own credit cards, making sure to note how he lied about his income on the applications, claiming my investment returns as his own earnings. 2 months into my investigation, Marcus made his move. He came home on a Friday evening looking somber and rehearsed. "Sylvia, we need to talk. I've been doing a lot of thinking about our marriage. I feel like we've grown apart. We want different things." I let him deliver his entire practiced speech about how we'd married too young, how we'd become different people, how he thought we should consciously uncouple like mature adults. I even let a few tears fall, which he seemed to expect. "If that's what you want," I whispered, playing the broken-hearted wife perfectly. His relief was visible. I've already talked to a lawyer just to understand the process. We can keep this simple. No need for dramatic court battles. We can use a mediator to split things fairly. Fairly. That word almost made me laugh, but I just nodded, letting him think he was in control. I've already drafted a preliminary agreement, he continued, pulling out papers. I think you'll find it's very generous. I reviewed his proposal. He wanted to keep the apartment since it was closer to his work. He'd buy out my half with a payment plan over 5 years. The joint accounts would be split 60-40 in his favour, since he was the lawyer and would have more expenses maintaining his career. The investment accounts would remain joint for now, to be divided after the divorce when markets were more favourable, he claimed. He made no mention of my grandmother's inheritance, no acknowledgement of the MBA I'd paid for, no reference to the hundreds of thousands I'd put into our life while he spent it on his mistress. I'll look this over, I said quietly. Maybe we should both have lawyers review it. Oh, I wouldn't waste money on that. My friend Brian can handle everything. He'll make sure you're protected. Brian, who worked at Marcus's firm. Brian, who was probably at Marcus's bachelor party. Brian, who would absolutely screw me over in favour of his friend. But I smiled and nodded, already texting Margaret under the table. The divorce proceedings were a masterclass in strategic patience. Margaret had coached me perfectly on how to appear cooperative while protecting my assets. We let Marcus and Brian think they were running the show while we documented every lie, every hidden asset, every attempt to manipulate the finances. Marcus had been sloppy in his arrogance. He'd opened cryptocurrency accounts using our joint funds, thinking I wouldn't understand blockchain technology. He'd purchased gold coins, storing them in a safety deposit box he thought I didn't know about. He'd even started moving money to an offshore account in the Caymans, using a shell company he'd created with his mistress as the beneficiary. During mediation sessions, I played my part flawlessly, the heartbroken wife who just wanted things to be over quickly. I'd dab at my eyes with tissues while Marcus portrayed himself as the victim of a marriage that had simply run its course. Sylvia was always so controlling with money, he told the mediator, a patronising older man who clearly sympathised with Marcus. I felt emasculated, unable to make any financial decisions. It's one of the reasons our marriage failed. I bit my tongue so hard it bled, remembering all the times Marcus had praised my financial acumen while spending my money on Brittany, but I stayed silent, letting him dig his grave deeper. The mediator suggested a settlement that gave Marcus almost everything he wanted. The apartment would be his, the joint accounts split in his favour, the investment accounts to be divided later, giving him time to drain them. My grandmother's inheritance wasn't even mentioned, though. Marcus's lawyer tried to claim it as marital property, since it had been commingled with joint funds. I think that's fair, I said softly, watching Marcus and Brian exchange triumphant glances. Margaret wanted to fight it, but I had a different plan. Let them think they've won, I whispered to her. Trust me. We signed the papers on a Thursday. Marcus could barely contain his glee as he shook hands with Brian, probably already planning his new life with Brittany. The divorce would be final in 30 days. No hard feelings, Marcus said, attempting to look magnanimous. I hope you find happiness, Sylvia. Oh, I will, I replied, thinking of what was coming next. The moment I left the lawyer's office, I set my plan in motion. First, I called every credit card company where Marcus was an authorized user on my accounts. American Express, Chase, Sapphire, Capital One Bank of America. One by one, I removed him as an authorized user, then cancelled the cards entirely. Are you sure you want to cancel? The American Express representative asked. You've been a Black Card member for 6 years with perfect payment history. Absolutely certain. And please note that any charges attempted after today should be flagged as fraudulent. Next, I froze the joint accounts using a legal provision Margaret had found. that allowed either party to prevent dissipation of assets during the divorce waiting period. Marcus wouldn't be able to touch a penny without my signature. Then I set up alerts on every account, every card, every investment. If Marcus or anyone tried to access funds, I'd know instantly. I also hired a forensic accountant to trace every dollar Marcus had hidden. Within 2 weeks, we'd found an additional $200,000 in hidden assets, plus evidence of tax fraud that would interest the IRS greatly. But I didn't act on any of it yet. I waited, knowing Marcus would hang himself with his own arrogance. 3 weeks after signing the divorce papers, I started getting the alerts. Marcus trying to use the Amex at Cartier. Declined. The Chase Sapphire at the Ritz-Carlton. Declined. The Capital One at a high-end restaurant. Declined. My phone rang. Marcus, furious. I didn't answer. He called 17 more times, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. Sylvia, there's something wrong with the cards. Call me back. The cards aren't working. This must be a mistake. Fix this immediately. This is not funny. I have important business expenses. You're sabotaging my career. You can't do this. Those are my cards too. I'll sue you for everything. I saved every voicemail, forwarding them to Margaret. Evidence of his continued attempts to use my credit for his personal expenses after our separation. Meanwhile, the wedding preparations were in full swing. How did I know? Because Brittany couldn't help but document everything on social media. The $75,000 venue at the Ocean View Resort in Newport. The Vera Wang dress that cost more than most people's cars. The destination bachelor party in Vegas that Marcus was somehow funding, despite his cards being cancelled. Jennifer, who'd become my secret ally, kept me informed. Marcus had borrowed $50,000 from his parents, telling them it was for a business investment opportunity. He'd taken a personal loan from the firm against his future partnership earnings. He'd even convinced Brittany's father to pay for the honeymoon in Bora Bora as a wedding gift, promising to pay him back within the year. He was drowning in debt but keeping up appearances. After all, he was about to marry into Brittany's wealthy family. Her father was a judge, her mother a pharmaceutical heiress. Marcus assumed they'd bail him out of any financial troubles. 3 days before the wedding, a mutual friend, Patricia, called me. I probably shouldn't tell you this, she said, but I thought you should know. Marcus and Brittany's wedding is this Saturday. The entire firm is invited. It's going to be the social event of the season. Oh, really? I said, feigning surprise. Good for them. You're taking this remarkably well. Patricia, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Marcus showed me exactly who he is. I hope Brittany enjoys what she's getting. What Patricia didn't know was that I'd already received my own invitation indirectly. Thomas, my private investigator, had connections everywhere. He'd gotten me a copy of the guest list, the timeline, even the catering menu. I knew exactly when the toasts would happen, when the cake would be cut, when the couple would have their first dance. More importantly, I knew that several vendors hadn't been fully paid. The florist was owed $15,000. The band needed their final $10,000 payment. The photographer was expecting $5,000 cash on the day. Marcus had promised them all payment at the reception, assuming he could use credit cards or write checks from accounts he thought still had money. I prepared my wedding outfit carefully. The dress was one Marcus had bought me for a firm gala 2 years ago, a stunning midnight blue designer gown that cost $8,000. I'd never worn it because I'd discovered his affair the day before the event. It seemed fitting to wear it now. In my clutch, I placed a single folder. Inside were copies of every fraudulent credit application Marcus had filed, every hidden asset he'd concealed during divorce proceedings, every piece of evidence showing he'd used my identity to open 12 different credit accounts over the past year, running up $300,000 in debt he thought I'd be responsible for. The crowning piece was a notarized letter from my forensic accountant detailing the embezzlement Marcus had committed at his own firm, billing personal expenses to client accounts. We'd discovered it accidentally while tracing his spending, but it was enough to destroy his career and possibly land him in prison. The morning of the wedding, I woke up calm. I did my hair and makeup carefully, looking elegant but understated. I wasn't there to outshine the bride. I was there to deliver justice. As I drove to Newport, I thought about the conversation I'd had with my therapist earlier that week. "Are you sure this is about justice and not revenge?" she'd asked. "What's the difference?" I'd replied. "He stole from me, lied to me, and committed fraud using my name. If I was a stranger, everyone would call it justice. Why should it be different because I was his wife?" She couldn't argue with that logic. I arrived at the Ocean View Resort at 4 in the afternoon, just as cocktail hour was starting. The chaos was already beginning. The florist was arguing with the wedding planner about payment. The band was threatening to leave if they didn't get their deposit. And Marcus, in his custom tuxedo, was sweating through his shirt as he frantically made phone calls from the men's room. I slipped in through a side entrance, my invitation courtesy of Patricia, who'd added me as her +1 without telling anyone. The venue was spectacular, I had to admit, overlooking the ocean, decorated with what must have been $50,000 in white roses and peonies. Brittany had excellent taste in everything except men. The cocktail hour was a fascinating study in barely controlled chaos. I positioned myself strategically behind a cluster of hydrangeas where I could observe without being immediately noticed. Waiters circulated with champagne and canapes, but there was an undercurrent of tension among the staff. I overheard 2 of them whispering about credit cards being declined when they'd tried to run the final catering payment. Brittany floated through the crowd in her Vera Wang creation, a $20,000 confection of lace and crystals that probably weighed more than she did. She looked radiant, but stressed her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she kept glancing toward the corner where Marcus was hunched over his phone. "Everything's perfect, Mother," I heard her say to an elegant woman dripping in diamonds. "Marcus just has a small banking issue, something about switching institutions." Her mother, whom I recognized from society pages as Catherine Westbrook, heiress to a pharmaceutical fortune, pursed her lips. "Banking issues today, how peculiar." Meanwhile, Marcus had recruited his best man, Derek, to help him handle the crisis. I could see them huddled by the bar, Marcus gesticulating wildly, while Derek made call after call on his phone. Occasionally, Marcus would scan the crowd, and I'd shift deeper behind my floral shield. Jennifer appeared at my elbow, pretending to admire the ocean view. "Third credit card company just declined him," she whispered. "He's trying to get a cash advance from Derek's cards now." "How much does he need?" "About 40,000 to get through today. The vendors are getting hostile. The photographer just said he's leaving in 30 minutes if he doesn't get paid." I sipped my champagne, a rather good vintage that Marcus definitely couldn't afford. Let him sweat a little longer. The ceremony was delayed 45 minutes. Guests grew restless, checking their watches and phones. The string quartet played the same repertoire twice. Brittany's father, Judge Westbrook, cornered Marcus near the gazebo, and even from a distance I could see the older man's face growing darker as Marcus gesticulated frantically. Finally, somehow, Marcus managed to cobble together enough promises and partial payments to get the ceremony started. Perhaps Derek's credit cards worked, or maybe Judge Westbrook had reluctantly advanced some cash. Either way, at 5:45, the music changed and guests were ushered to their seats. I chose a spot in the 7th row on the groom's side, behind Marcus's cousins from Connecticut, close enough to be seen when I wanted far enough to remain unnoticed until the moment was right. The ceremony itself was almost comedic in its irony. Marcus stood at the altar, his jaw clenched in what guests probably thought was emotion, but I recognized as barely controlled panic. His phone, supposedly turned off, kept buzzing in his pocket. "Bill collectors don't respect wedding ceremonies." Brittany glided down the aisle to Pachelbel's cannon, her father's face a mask of judicial sternness. The judge had the look of a man who'd just discovered his daughter was marrying a con artist, but couldn't stop the proceedings without causing a scandal. The officiant, apparently unaware of the financial drama, waxed poetic about trust partnership and building a future together. Marriage, he intoned, is about complete honesty and sharing everything, the good times and the challenging ones. I had to suppress a laugh. Marcus hadn't been honest with me, and now he wasn't being honest with Brittany. The pattern was clear. When they reached the vows, Marcus's voice cracked. Brittany, you've shown me what true love means. You've made me want to be a better man, to build something real and lasting with you. The same words, almost verbatim, that he'd said to me 7 years ago. I wondered if he had a script he used, like a salesman's pitch. I promise to provide for you, to give you the life you deserve, to never let you down. That's when I stood up. The movement was subtle, just rising to let someone pass, but Marcus's eyes found me instantly. The colour drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Brittany noticed his distraction and followed his gaze, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowing in confusion. I smiled serenely and sat back down, smoothing my dress. The ceremony continued, but Marcus kept glancing back at me, sweat now visibly beading on his forehead despite the ocean breeze. They exchanged rings, kissed, and were pronounced husband and wife to thunderous applause. As they walked back down the aisle, Marcus's eyes locked with mine. I mouthed a single word: congratulations. He stumbled, Brittany catching his arm with a confused giggle for the photographers. The reception was held in an adjacent ballroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic. Round tables for 10 were draped in ivory silk centerpieces of white orchids and roses towering 3 feet high. The band, apparently partially paid, set up while guests found their seats. I wasn't assigned a table, technically being an uninvited guest, so I stood near the bar, ordering a martini with 3 olives. The bartender, looking harried, muttered something about hoping his paycheck cleared. The wedding party entered to celebration by Cool and the gang Marcus, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. Brittany had changed into a reception dress, a shorter designer number that probably cost another $5,000. She was glowing, oblivious to her new husband's distress, posing for photos and laughing with her bridesmaids. Dinner was served, though I noticed several waitstaff whispering urgently with the catering manager. The wine stopped flowing after the salad course, allegedly due to a supply issue, though I suspected it was more about payment. Guests started murmuring, wondering why such an expensive venue was having service problems. Then came the toasts. Derek stood first, raising his champagne glass. He was Marcus's law school roommate, now a prosecutor in the district attorney's office. His speech was a masterpiece of unintentional irony. I've known Marcus for 12 years, Derek began, and I've never met anyone more resourceful. This guy could talk his way out of anything and into anything. Remember law school, buddy? When you convinced the dean you deserved that scholarship, even though you didn't technically qualify. That's Marcus, always finding a way to get what he wants. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Marcus's smile looked painted on. But seriously, Derek continued, Marcus knows how to invest in what matters. He's built his career strategically, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Brittany, you're getting a man who knows the value of a good investment. That was my cue. I stood up slowly, deliberately, my midnight blue dress catching the light from the chandeliers. The movement drew attention, heads turning as I raised my own glass of water. I'd like to add something to that beautiful toast, I said, my voice clear and carrying across the ballroom. The room fell silent. Marcus's face went from pale to green. Brittany looked confused, glancing between her new husband and this unexpected speaker. My name is Sylvia, I continued, walking slowly toward the head table. I'm Marcus's ex-wife. The divorce was finalized exactly 30 days ago. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Brittany's mother half rose from her seat. Judge Westbrook's face darkened to purple. Derek is absolutely right about Marcus knowing the value of a good investment, I said now, standing directly in front of the head table. He invested my grandmother's inheritance so wisely, all $450,000 of it. He invested in his MBA, which I paid for. He invested in this beautiful bride's engagement ring purchased with my credit cards. The silence was absolute. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. But here's the thing about investments, I continued looking directly at Marcus. Sometimes the SEC and the FBI get very interested when someone uses another person's identity to open credit accounts. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the folder, placing it gently on the head table. Marcus, the FBI would like to know why you used my identity to open 12 credit accounts totaling $300,000 without my knowledge. The explosion was immediate. Brittany's sharp intake of breath, Judge Westbrook shooting to his feet, Marcus's parents looking horrified, guests pulling out phones, either recording or texting furiously. That's slander, Marcus finally found his voice, though it came out as more of a squeak. You can't prove anything. Actually, I said calmly, I can. It's all in that folder. Every fraudulent application with your digital signature, every hidden asset you didn't declare in our divorce. Oh, and Brian, I looked at Marcus's lawyer friend at table 3. You might want to retain your own counsel. Knowingly hiding assets during divorce proceedings is a crime. Brittany was staring at the folder like it was a bomb. Marcus, what is she talking about? She's lying. Marcus stood up, knocking over his champagne glass. She's just a bitter ex-wife trying to ruin my happiness. Then you won't mind if the FBI investigates, I said. They're particularly interested in the embezzlement from your firm's client accounts. $60,000 in personal expenses billed to the Morrison Industries case alone. Derek, the prosecutor best man, had gone rigid. Marcus, is this true? The band leader approached the wedding planner loud enough for nearby tables to hear. We're leaving if we don't get paid now. Cash only. The florist appeared at another door. I'm calling the police if I don't get my $15,000. The photographer was already packing up his equipment. This is insane, Marcus shouted, but his voice was desperate, not angry. Brittany, honey, don't listen to her. She's crazy. Judge Westbrook picked up the folder and opened it. His expression as he scanned the documents was something I'll remember forever. The evolution from confusion to understanding to pure rage was almost beautiful. You stole her identity, he said, his voice deadly quiet. You committed fraud. My daughter married a criminal. Daddy. Brittany's voice was small, lost. I turned to address the room one last time. I want to thank you all for witnessing this. The FBI will probably be contacting some of you for statements. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Oh, and Brittany. I looked at the bride whose makeup was now streaming down her cheeks. The ring is beautiful. You should keep it. I paid for it after all. With that, I walked out of the ballroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor as chaos erupted behind me. Voices raised in anger and confusion, the band packing up their instruments, vendors demanding payment, Marcus shouting that he could explain everything. The last thing I heard as the doors closed behind me was Brittany's wail. The marriage is annulled. Daddy, get it annulled right now. I drove home with the windows down, ocean air whipping through my hair, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone was already exploding with texts and calls, but I ignored them all. There would be time to deal with the aftermath tomorrow. Tonight, I'd delivered justice in a midnight blue dress, and it felt magnificent. The aftermath was even more spectacular than I'd imagined. By the time I got home to my new apartment in Cambridge, a cosy 2-bedroom I'd rented after the divorce, social media was already exploding. Someone had recorded my entire speech and posted it on TikTok with the caption, Ex-wife destroys cheating groom at his wedding. Within 3 hours, it had 2 million views. My phone had 97 missed calls. Marcus, his parents, Brittany, Judge Westbrook, various wedding guests, and 17 unknown numbers that were probably journalists. The only call I returned was from Margaret, my attorney. "Sylvia, what did you do?" she asked, though I could hear suppressed laughter in her voice. "I told the truth at a public gathering. That's not a crime, is it?" "No, but it's certainly going to make Monday interesting. The FBI has already called my office. They want to meet with you tomorrow." "Perfect. I have all the documentation ready." Jennifer texted me updates throughout the night. The wedding reception had descended into complete chaos after I left. The vendors, unpaid and angry, had started removing everything. The florist took back the centerpieces. The band packed up mid-song. The catering staff stopped serving dinner before the main course. Judge Westbrook had apparently lost his judicial composure, completely screaming at Marcus in front of 200 guests about destroying his daughter's reputation. Brittany's mother had to be given anxiety medication. Brittany herself had locked herself in the bridal suite and refused to come out for 3 hours. Marcus had tried to salvage the situation, begging Derek to lend him money, calling his parents, even attempting to convince guests to loan him cash. But once Judge Westbrook started reading from my folder, announcing each fraudulent transaction, Marcus's reputation disintegrated in real time. The coup de grace came when someone from the district attorney's office, who'd been attending as Derek's +1, made a call. By 10 that evening, as guests were fleeing the disaster, police arrived to question Marcus about the fraud allegations. He wasn't arrested that night, but the damage was done. Every legal professional in Boston would know by morning. The story was already spreading through law firm group chats and professional networks. Marcus's career at Preston and Associates was over before the wedding cake, which never got cut, could be returned to the bakery. The next morning, Sunday, I met with 2 FBI agents at Margaret's office. Agent Sarah Coleman and Agent James Wright were surprisingly pleasant, especially after I handed over 3 boxes of meticulously organized evidence. "This is some of the most thorough documentation we've ever seen," Agent Coleman said, flipping through spreadsheets. "You should consider a career in forensic accounting." "Funny you should say that," I replied. "I'm actually thinking about starting my own firm specializing in financial fraud investigation." The agents took my statement over 4 hours. Every credit card opened in my name without permission, every forged signature, every hidden asset Marcus had tried to conceal. The embezzlement from his firm was particularly interesting to them as it crossed state lines and involved federal wire fraud. "Will I get my money back?" I asked. "The seized assets will go through federal asset forfeiture. You'll be first in line as the primary victim. It might take time, but you should recover most of it." Monday morning brought a tsunami of consequences for Marcus. Preston and Associates fired him before 9 a.m., not even allowing him to clean out his desk. The Massachusetts Bar Association opened an immediate investigation into ethical violations. The district attorney's office where Derek worked announced they were pursuing criminal charges. But the most satisfying update came from an unexpected source. Brittany called me Tuesday afternoon. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "I was horrible to you. Not directly, but I knew he was married when we started. I thought I was special that he'd never do to me what he did to you." "He would have," I said simply. "Marcus doesn't change. He just finds new victims. The marriage is being annulled. My father is making sure of it. But I wanted you to know that we found more. After your revelation, I went through his things. He had 3 other women he was talking to online. 3, he was already lining up his next targets while planning our wedding. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "Don't be. You saved me from years of what you went through. Can I ask you something? How did you stay so calm? I would have burned everything down the moment I found out. Revenge served cold is more satisfying than revenge served hot. Plus, I wanted legal justice, not just emotional satisfaction. Brittany laughed bitterly. Well, you got both. The video of you at the wedding has 15 million views now. You're trending on Twitter as Queen of Receipts. There are memes everywhere. Over the next month, Marcus's life systematically imploded. The federal investigation revealed he'd stolen over $200,000 from client accounts at his firm. The FBI found the offshore accounts, the cryptocurrency, the gold coins. Everything was seized. His parents, mortified by the public scandal, cut him off completely. His mother sent me a letter apologizing, saying she'd always suspected something was off, but hadn't wanted to interfere. His father, a retired federal judge himself, was so ashamed he resigned from all his board positions. The Bar Association didn't just suspend Marcus's license, they permanently disbarred him. At 35, his legal career was over. No firm would ever hire him. His Ivy League education and six-figure salary were worthless now. The criminal trial was set for 6 months out, but Marcus's lawyer, not Brian, who was fighting his own ethics charges, advised him to take a plea deal. 2 years in federal prison, full restitution to all victims, and 3 years probation after release. If he'd fought it and lost, he was looking at 15 years. Jennifer kept me updated on the gossip from Preston and Associates. The firm was conducting internal audits on all of Marcus's cases, terrified of more hidden fraud. Several partners who'd protected Marcus were demoted or pushed out. The paralegal program was restructured with new oversight policies. Brittany, of course, quit immediately and left Boston altogether. 3 months after the wedding disaster, I got a call from an unexpected source, Thomas Hutchinson, the private investigator I'd hired. Sylvia, I have a business proposition for you. I'm getting too old for this work, but I've got more clients than ever wanting financial fraud investigations. After what you did to Marcus, everyone wants to hire you, want to partner up. It was perfect timing. I'd already quit my position at the accounting firm, tired of the corporate grind and the whispers about being Marcus's ex-wife. With my reputation as someone who could uncover any financial deception and Thomas's investigative skills, we could build something unique. We opened Hutchinson and Associates Financial Investigations 2 weeks later. Our first client was a woman whose husband had been hiding assets in their divorce. We found $2 million in cryptocurrency he'd claimed didn't exist. Our second was a small business owner whose partner had been embezzling. We recovered $800,000. Word spread quickly. The woman who'd taken down Marcus Ashford at his own wedding was available to help others facing financial betrayal. My calendar filled up with consultations. I hired 2 junior accountants and another investigator. Within 6 months, we had a waiting list. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus's betrayal had led me to my true calling. I was making more money than I ever had in corporate accounting, doing work that actually mattered, helping people protect themselves from predators, like my ex-husband. Speaking of Marcus, his sentencing happened 8 months after the wedding. I attended sitting in the back of the courtroom. He'd lost weight, his designer suits replaced with an ill-fitting grey suit from Goodwill. His parents weren't there. Neither was Brittany, obviously. When given the chance to speak, Marcus tried to play victim one last time. I was under enormous pressure to succeed. I made mistakes trying to provide the life I thought everyone wanted. I never meant to hurt anyone. Judge Harrison, who'd reviewed all the evidence, wasn't buying it. Mr. Ashford, you systematically defrauded multiple victims over years. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern of criminal behavior driven by greed and narcissism. You've shown no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught. 2 years in federal prison, 3 years probation, $480,000 in restitution, most of it to me. lifetime ban from working in finance or law. It was everything I'd hoped for. As court officers led him away in handcuffs, Marcus looked back at me. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw no remorse, no understanding of what he'd done, just anger that I'd won. I smiled serenely and gave him a small wave goodbye. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. They wanted a statement from the woman whose wedding crash had become legendary in Boston legal circles. Justice was served, I said simply. I hope this sends a message to anyone who thinks they can use financial manipulation and fraud to control their partners. We're not victims, we're survivors, and we keep receipts. 6 months after Marcus reported to federal prison, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined during those dark days of discovering his betrayal. Hutchinson and Associates had moved into a beautiful office space in Back Bay with a view of the Charles River and a team of 8 employees. We'd become the go-to firm for financial fraud investigation in New England. I'd also started speaking at women's financial empowerment conferences, sharing my story and teaching others how to protect their assets. The irony that Marcus's MBA, which I'd paid for, had taught me enough about complex financial instruments to catch him, wasn't lost on anyone. It was at one of these conferences where I met William. He was a high school economics teacher attending to learn more about financial literacy to share with his students. During the Q&A after my presentation, he asked thoughtful questions about how to teach young people to recognize financial red flags in relationships. Too many of my students think joint accounts mean love, he said. They don't understand that financial boundaries are healthy. We talked for 2 hours after the conference ended. William was everything Marcus wasn't. Transparent about his middle-class teacher's salary, proud of his work shaping young minds, completely unimpressed by wealth and status. He drove a 10-year-old Honda and thought designer suits were a waste of money that could go toward books or travel. Our first date was at a taco truck near MIT. Our second was visiting the Museum of Science. By our third, when he cooked me dinner in his modest apartment, I realized I was learning to trust again. William never asked about my money. He insisted on paying for dates within his budget. When I mentioned my inheritance, he just said, "That's nice. Make sure you keep it protected." Meanwhile, updates about Marcus trickled in through the legal grapevine. He was not doing well in federal prison. His arrogance hadn't won him any friends among inmates who had no patience for white-collar criminals crying about their fall from grace. He'd been transferred twice for his own safety. Brittany had reinvented herself entirely. According to her now public Instagram, she'd moved to California, started therapy, and was working as a victim's advocate for women who'd been financially abused. She'd even written a blog post titled, "I Almost Married a Sociopath: How One Woman's Courage at My Wedding Saved My Life." We actually began corresponding, strange as that sounds. She'd send me updates on her recovery journey. I'd share resources for financial literacy. Eventually, she flew back to Boston to have coffee with me. "I need to apologize properly," she said, looking me directly in the eye. "I was 23 and stupid, but that's no excuse. I knew you existed. I knew he was married. I chose to believe his lies about you being controlling and cold because it made me feel special." "We all believed his lies," I replied. "That's what makes him dangerous. He knows exactly what each person needs to hear." "Can I ask you something? That moment at the wedding when you stood up with that folder, were you scared?" "Terrified. But I was more scared of letting him get away with it, of letting him do to you what he'd done to me." Brittany reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you. You could have just walked away after the divorce. Instead, you saved me from years of financial and emotional abuse." Our unexpected friendship became one of the most healing aspects of my recovery. We'd both been victims of the same predator, but instead of letting it divide us, we chose solidarity. She even testified at Marcus's restitution hearing supporting my claim for full repayment. Judge Westbrook, Brittany's father, became an unexpected ally as well. He used his influence to ensure Marcus's criminal case was prosecuted aggressively. He also referred several clients to my firm judge's spouses who suspected financial infidelity. His judicial connections proved invaluable for navigating complex interstate fraud cases. A year after the wedding disaster, I received a letter from federal prison. Marcus's handwriting, once bold and confident, was shaky. "Sylvia, I know you hate me, and you have every right, but I need you to know that I'm getting help. There's a therapist here who specializes in narcissistic personality disorder. I'm beginning to understand what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand the damage I caused. Marcus." I read it 3 times, then showed it to my therapist. "How does it make you feel?" she asked. "Nothing," I said, surprised at my own response. "I don't feel anger or satisfaction or hope. I just feel nothing. That's healing," she said. "He no longer has power over your emotions." I threw the letter away without responding. Marcus's journey toward understanding his actions was his own path to walk. I had no obligation to participate in his redemption narrative. My firm continued to grow. We exposed a Ponzi scheme that had targeted elderly retirees. We uncovered a massive embezzlement ring at a non-profit. We helped dozens of spouses discover hidden assets during divorces. Each case felt like a small victory, not just for our clients, but for me personally. William and I had been dating for 8 months when he met my family at Thanksgiving. My mother, who'd never liked Marcus but kept quiet to avoid interfering, adored William immediately. "He looks at you like you hung the moon," she whispered while we were cooking. "Marcus looked at you like you were an acquisition. Mum, why didn't you say something before? Would you have listened? You were in love. Sometimes we have to learn our own lessons. I'm just glad you learned yours before it was too late." My grandmother would have loved William. He shared her values of hard work, integrity, and living below your means. He also encouraged my independence, never once suggesting we combine finances or that I should trust him with my money. "Your money is yours," he said simply when I brought up the subject. "What's mine is mine. What we build together, if we choose to, that's ours. But your inheritance, your business that's sacred, that's your security." The news of Marcus's situation in prison got progressively worse. He'd been placed in solitary confinement after getting into debt with other inmates over gambling. He'd tried to run the same cons inside, promising legal help he couldn't deliver, taking commissary items on credit he couldn't repay. Even in prison, he couldn't stop himself from running scams. His parents finally broke their silence in a letter to me. They were selling their estate in Wellesley, downsizing to a small condo in Florida. The shame of what their son had done had destroyed their social standing. His mother had resigned from all her charity boards. His father rarely left the house. "We failed him," his mother wrote. "We gave him everything except consequences. Every time he got in trouble as a child, we bailed him out. Every lie he told, we chose to believe. We created the monster who hurt you, and we're deeply sorry." I felt unexpected sympathy for them. They'd lost their son twice, first to his crimes, then to prison. The golden boy they'd raised was revealed as fool's gold, and they had to live with their role in creating him. 18 months after the wedding, my firm was hired for our biggest case yet. A multi-million-dollar fraud scheme involving a hedge fund manager and his ties to offshore accounts. The FBI wanted our help tracing the money. The case would take months and pay enough to set up my firm for major expansion. The same week, William proposed, not with a massive diamond or elaborate production, but with his grandmother's simple gold band during a quiet walk along the Charles River. "I know you might never want to marry again," he said, "and I understand if the answer is no, but I want you to know that I see you, all of you, the strength and the scars, and I love every part. I promise to never ask you to be less than you are. I promise to protect your independence as fiercely as you do, and I promise to never, ever make you pay for my MBA." That last line made me laugh through tears. How do you know I won't steal your identity and rack up massive debts? Because you're Sylvia Martinez, the woman who brought receipts to her ex's wedding. You're the most honest person I know. Also, my credit's terrible, and I have about $12 in savings, so good luck with that. I said yes, but with conditions. Prenuptial agreement, separate accounts, full financial transparency with quarterly reviews like a business partnership. William agreed to everything, even suggesting we add a clause about independent financial audits if either party requested. We married the following spring in a tiny ceremony with just family and close friends. The entire wedding cost less than the champagne at Marcus's disaster of a reception. Jennifer was my maid of honor. Even Brittany attended, bringing her new boyfriend, a social worker she'd met in therapy. During the reception, in a small restaurant overlooking the harbour, Jennifer raised her glass for a toast. 2 years ago, I watched Sylvia discover the worst betrayal imaginable. I watched her gather evidence with the patience of a saint and the precision of a surgeon. I watched her deliver justice in a midnight blue dress. But mostly, I've watched her transform pain into purpose betrayal, into business success, and heartbreak into happiness. William, you're the luckiest man alive, and if you ever forget that, remember that Sylvia keeps receipts. Everyone laughed, but William's response was perfect. I plan to give her nothing but good ones. Marcus was released from federal prison after serving 18 months of his 2-year sentence, time reduced for good behavior and completing rehabilitation programs. He moved back in with his parents in Florida, unable to find work with his criminal record and disbarment. The last I heard, he was working at a car rental agency, making $15 an hour. The restitution payments come monthly, automatically deducted from his paychecks. It will take him 20 years to pay everything back, assuming he maintains steady employment. Each deposit into my account feels like a small vindication, not for the money, but for the acknowledgement of what he stole. My firm now has offices in Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C. We've helped recover over $50 million in hidden assets for our clients. I speak at universities training the next generation of forensic accountants. My story has become a cautionary tale in law schools about the consequences of financial fraud. William and I bought a house in Cambridge, each contributing exactly half the down payment from our separate accounts. We have a joint account for household expenses that we both monitor, and everything else remains separate. It might not sound romantic to some, but to me it's the most romantic thing in the world, a partner who respects my financial autonomy. Sometimes I think about that moment at Marcus's wedding, standing there with my folder of evidence, heart pounding but voice steady. I could have handled it privately through lawyers and courts alone, but making it public, making sure everyone knew what he'd done, that was about more than revenge. It was about every woman who's been told she's crazy for suspecting something's wrong, every person who's been financially abused and told it's their fault for trusting, every victim who's been advised to move on quietly, to avoid making a scene. Sometimes making a scene is exactly what's needed. Sometimes the best response to betrayal isn't silent dignity, but loud, documented receipts, included truth-telling. The profound lesson I learned isn't just about protecting assets or maintaining financial independence, though those are crucial. It's about recognizing that when someone shows you through their actions that they don't respect you, believe them the first time. Don't wait for the 100th piece of evidence. Don't explain away the red flags. Don't subsidize your own betrayal. But more than that, I learned that the best revenge isn't just success, it's transformation. Marcus thought he was stealing my money, but he actually gave me something invaluable, the knowledge of my own strength, the discovery of my true calling, and the wisdom to never again confuse control for love or joint accounts for intimacy. Every client I help recover hidden assets, every woman I teach to protect her financial future, every predator we expose through our investigations, it all stems from that moment when I chose to stop being a victim and start being a weapon against financial fraud. Marcus is serving his real-life sentence now, irrelevance, while he struggles to rebuild from nothing, labelled forever as a convicted fraudster. I built an empire from the ashes of our marriage. The money he stole has been recovered with interest. The reputation he tried to destroy became my greatest marketing tool. The woman he thought he'd broken became unbreakable. And that wedding, his perfect day with his perfect new bride, will forever be remembered not as the beginning of his new life, but as the moment his house of cards finally collapsed. One sentence delivered at exactly the right moment changed everything. Not through magic or luck, but through patience, preparation, and the kind of justice that comes from keeping very, very good records. The FBI agent was right when she said I should consider a career in forensic accounting, but what I really became was something more: a professional destroyer of financial predators, a protector of the vulnerable, and living proof that sometimes the best endings aren't happy endings, but just endings, clean documented and absolutely final. As I write this, sitting in my office overlooking the Charles River William, texting me about dinner plans, my business thriving, and my life rebuilt on my own terms, I think about everyone out there still trapped in financial abuse, still being told they're too sensitive, too controlling, or too suspicious. To them I say, trust your instincts. Document everything. Keep your own money. And when the moment comes to reveal the truth, don't whisper it. Announce it at the wedding. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and exposing a truth that needed to be told? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more about recognizing and escaping financial abuse. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that their suspicions are valid and their financial independence is worth fighting for. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the best protection against betrayal is your own bank account, your own credit cards, and your own carefully documented evidence. Stay strong and stay financially independent.